The Nikon Z6 is the little brother to the Nikon Z7, both of which are Nikon's brand new full-frame mirrorless cameras. Let's go ahead and go in depth on Nikon's new entry-level mirrorless shooter. Welcome everyone, it is Andrew here from AppleInsider, and we've got the Nikon Z6, and we've got it in kit form, which means we've got both the body and the stock 24 to 70mm lens. And while it technically is a kit lens, it is by no means an entry-level cheap lens. We're first going to take a look at the camera itself and how it performs. Then we're going to take a look at how it integrates with Apple products such as iPad and iPhone. Then we're going to jump into the lenses and of course plenty of sample photography. As we go through the requisite unboxing, let's take a look at the raw specs of the Z6. So it is a 24.5 megapixel camera that's a little bit down from the 45.7 megapixels of the Z7. And honestly, that is the biggest difference between the two. And in other areas, the Z6 actually performs better than the Z7. For instance, you can shoot 12 frames per second on the Z6 and only 9 on the Z7. You also have better light sensitivity, with the Z6 getting 204,800 ISO and the Z7 only coming in with 102,400 ISO. So it does a bit better in low light situations. Other than that, everything is the same. They both pack the latest X-Speed processor, they're both completely mirrorless with full frame sensors, weatherproof, have the articulating touchscreen, and so much more. Inside the box, the exact same things we saw with the Z7, we see here with the Z6. A few things just to point out, it does come with, of course, a complimentary strap. It's always good to have a camera strap on there, unless you're shooting in a studio on a tripod the entire time. Basic straps are okay, but we still prefer to upgrade them to a Peak Design strap. They're our favorite, and we use them constantly. We also have a slightly updated version of the popular battery. It is an EN EL15B. So any EN EL15 batteries will work just fine here, but if you use the B version, you can actually charge it in the camera, which is a great boom for Nikon users. We have the same battery charge that we've seen before, but honestly with the Z6 and the Z7, we don't use these that much because you can just charge the battery in the camera. You want to charge up extras, that's great, charge two at the same time, one in the camera, one out, perfect. It comes with a USB cable and it does use USB-C this time. It's a bummer it's not USB-C to USB-C, but rather USB-C to USB-A. Still super fast and it'll work with any legacy machines. The camera itself is an incredibly compact design. Feels very comfortable. It is slightly larger than the A7R III, but not much that you're going to notice if you're comparing the two cameras, and it weighs quite a bit less. A couple things that we really like is the viewfinder. That EVF sticks out a little bit, so when you put your eye up against it, your nose doesn't necessarily touch the touchscreen, so that's very nice to see. The touchscreen also articulates up and down, making it easy to shoot directly down or up at all these different angles. So if you shoot a lot of different angles, it's really nice to have those moving screens. It is something else that could break over time, but we've seemed to find that they're very sturdy in past Nikon cameras. Aside from the big screen on the back, you also have a small screen on the top giving you additional information such as battery life and a few other primary values. Overall, we found the controls on the new Nikon Z6 as well as the Z7 very intuitive and pretty much line up with any other Nikon system that you've seen in the past. There's nothing really too surprising or wonky going on that's going to give you pause. They're pretty much set up the exact same way as all other Nikons with just a few small tweaks. We have found a few knobs a little bit difficult to move in certain situations. For instance, if you use the function buttons that are on the right hand side of the lens and try to control the knob on the top right hand side of the grip on the front, it's a little bit awkward trying to do with one hand. We have our media card slot on that right hand side, right inside the grip, and the battery also goes into the grip. Again, you can charge the battery in the camera using that new USB-C port, which is perfect if you've already got a Mac or one of the latest iPads. Use your USB-C cables you've already got, power up your laptop, power up your iPad, and power up your camera with these same cables. On the side, covering all the ports, there are rubber guards in place. This is going to help weather and debris from getting in there, but they're a little bit awkward, especially if you use that USB-C port frequently since it is towards the top. So you do have to keep opening that up, and I hope it doesn't get damaged over time. Looking at the back controls, there's a bunch of different buttons, which is amazing. It makes it so easy to control this camera, especially combined with the touchscreen. That play button on the left-hand side allows you to easily view the images and videos you've already taken. We have a trash button, of course, which makes things easy. And we love going between the viewfinder and the screen. Because it is that EVF, we can press that button on the side of the viewfinder to change where we see images at, whether it's on the display below, the viewfinder automatically switching or prioritizing one or the other. Usually it's on automatic, and as you put your face against the viewfinder, it'll automatically switch. Some situations you may not want to do that. We actually had dust kind of get over the sensor there, so by forcing it to use the EVF, we were able to put our face up to that and see all of our images, menus, everything through the EVF rather than the display, which was really, really nice. The touchscreen also makes it easy to change a lot of different settings. Tapping on the information button pulls up a control there, especially if you're in manual or a specific mode. Ones that can't be changed are automatically grayed out. So if you're in aperture preferred or shutter priority and you can't change certain settings, you won't have the option to change them, which makes it easy to understand what you're looking at. Of course, menu button pulls into the normal shooting menu that everyone's seen before if they use a Nikon. Nothing really convoluted there. A lot of the same stuff we've been using before on Nikons. If you're familiar with those, you'll be familiar with the new one. We really want to point out again how much we love that electronic viewfinder. It looks sharp, clear, and it makes a big difference when shooting outside and you can't see that back screen. You can use the viewfinder to preview images, make changes. Everything you could do on the big screen, you could do on the small one. Looking at the ports, we have a headphone jack on top and a microphone input right below that on the first line. And then on the second line, we have a few more, including the USB-C port on top, the HDMI port in the middle, and the remote port down at the bottom. We think it would have made more sense to put something like the USB-C port down at the bottom instead of the top, because that's the one we use a lot more than the remote or even the HDMI. While you can charge the battery in the camera, you cannot charge it while at the same time that you're shooting. So it is a bit of a downside, and we hope would be changed on an updated version of the camera in the future. One aspect of the Nikon Z7 and the Z6 that may rub people the wrong way was the choice of card format, though personally, we love the option that they've gone with. Nikon has once more chosen to use XQD cards in their cameras, and right now, you're a little bit limited as only Sony really puts those out, and they're quite expensive. There's also only one media slot, so you don't have two like in the past, and you can't use SD or micro SD cards. Professional photographers out there may be really disappointed that there's not a backup media slot, but this is more the entry-level model, so that's more of a problem with the Z7 than it is with the Z6. It's still a fairly expensive camera, but it's less of a problem here than it is with the more professionally lined shooter. Because you can't use SD cards, you can't use Apple's SD card readers, whether it's for Lightning or for USB-C. Luckily, you have a few workarounds, including the Lightning to USB-A adapter that Apple sells, or you can just use a USB-C to USB cable with the brand new iPad Pros. That's our preferred solution, and it has simplified our workflow greatly. Just take your camera, plug into your iPad using the same cable that you use to charge it with. Alternatively, you can use the excellent SnapBridge application. There's tons of different uses for it. Starting off, it works over Bluetooth or Wi-Fi, including Wi-Fi AC in 5 or 2.4 gigahertz. By using that 5 gigahertz, it actually transfers images and videos a whole lot faster than the cameras used to do in the past. Whether you shot in RAW or you shot in just high-resolution JPEGs, it's very easy to move the photos from the camera onto your phone or onto your iPad. Even better, you can control your camera from your phone. Once it's in Wi-Fi mode, you can connect and start remote photography. You can choose where you're focusing on the screen. You can change all these other values here on the bottom, including your shutter speed, your f value, so open or close that aperture. We can adjust our exposure compensation, the ISO, and even the white balance. Tapping the gear icon allows us to make a few more modifications, including what size image to automatically transfer over to our phone. So in this case, it'll transfer over a 2 megapixel photo while keeping the original there on the camera. We also change the self timer and whether or not we want to have live view on. Along the top, you can change the shooting mode, manual, aperture preferred, whatever you want to choose, switch between video and photo mode, and a few other stats, including battery life. There are many uses for this remote photography, whether you just want to use it to take a photo of you and your family and you want to make sure you're in the shot, or you're doing something longer, like a long exposure shot where you don't want to touch the camera and potentially move it when it's on the tripod. By tethering over Bluetooth to the mobile application, SnapBridge is actually able to add geodata to any of the photos that you take on the Nikon. So if you go out, you like having that location data added to the photos for your own personal gallery once you import them into iCloud in the Photos app. That's an easy way to do it, so you don't have to edit it after the fact. Moving on to the lenses, there's a limited supply of lenses that shipped with the Nikon Z6 and the Z7, simply because Nikon has switched to the brand new Z format. This new format is what Nikon is planning to use for the next 100 years or so. They haven't replaced their existing lens mount for a long time, so it was finally time for them to do so. Has a much wider opening, can allow a lot more light to come in, and can get even wider lenses going into the future. But for right now, there's just a few different lenses that shipped, including the 24 to 70mm that we're checking out here, 35 and 50mm prime lenses, and a couple other options. There's also the FTZ adapter that allows you to work with older f-mount lenses. We've been using the new lenses for quite some time now, and we're in love with them. They feel incredible, and Nikon's always been known for putting out some amazing glass, and they continue to do that with their Z-mount lenses. For instance, there's a couple little things about the 24 to 70 that we've become really fond of. For instance, as soon as you turn it on, it's automatically in this locked position and it won't allow you to take photos. But the lens is not going to move out by itself. So you have to give it a little bit of a turn to get to that 24mm point. So it prevents that lens from kind of coming out automatically when you don't want it to, whether it's hanging by your hip or in a bag. So it kind of locks in position there. Once it goes out, it locks into place and you can go freely from 24 to 70 very smooth. As Nikon brings out more lenses, something like a 300mm that's going to have a lot larger lens to extend, we're sure they're going to include this functionality and it's going to be even more warranted. Nikon's also included the ability to press down one of the function buttons and change what the actual focus ring does. So instead of focusing your shot, you could use that to change the aperture or white balance or whatever you'd like it to be. If you have some old f-mount lenses lying around, like something expensive like this monstrosity here, instead of having to buy a new one, you can simply use the FTZ adapter. Aside from just picking up the adapter by itself, you can get it bundled with the Nikon Z6 and the 24 to 70mm lens. So you have everything you need to use the new lenses and your old. Something like our 2.8 aperture 80 to 200mm giant here. It easily attaches that adapter, but it does extend a little bit more than it already did, which can be a little bit unwieldy and quite a bit heavy. Inside of the Nikon Z6 is a new in-body stabilization. It has a 5-axis stabilization feature now for native lenses. And when you add older lenses, like our 80 to 200 here, it'll add a 3rd axis to the already 2 axes of stabilization that were already built in. So you're going to get new functionality for your existing lenses when it comes to stabilization. Nikon has been very open about lens availability for the new Z-mount cameras. And if you're a little bit worried from the beginning, don't, because Nikon has some very enticing options coming down the pipeline with releases early next year and going long into the future. So here is a variety of sample shots that we took with the Nikon Z6, and please forgive the dreary nature of the fall-winter season in the Northeast US. With nearly 300 focus points, the focus was very quick for us. We had no issues there. Even shooting moving subjects like our dogs was not a problem. As we moved into low light situations, we were blown away by the performance of the Nikon Z6. The in-body stabilization combined with the wide range of ISO allowed us to get some great low light shots. That in-camera stabilization can compensate for 5 steps worth of shutter speed, so we can keep that shutter open a little bit longer without anything moving in the frame. Here's a great example shot with the Nikon Z6 on the left and our iPhone XS Max on the right. There is no difference between these two shots. Even getting the dog to hold still was a feat on its own. The Nikon Z6 is an impressive all-around camera. It packs a ton of features and great performance into a competitively priced body. It lacks the massive megapixel count found in the Z7, but makes up for that for most people with faster burst mode and better low light photography. If you want to get the best prices on the new Nikon Z6, find the links below in the description.
If you enjoyed this video, like it and hit that subscribe button. Also, check out our price guide, which makes it extremely easy to find the best deals on Apple products updated daily. Be sure to follow us on social media, and we'll see you in the next video.